How's it going, everybody? It's Clark Taylor from Wrestling Republic. This is another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcasts, Thursday, February 23rd. It's the morning for me over here on the West Coast, and I'm heading straight to Las Vegas at the end of this show, which I'm quite excited about. But before that, we've got a Throwback Thursday episode. We're going to go through Dynamite. We've got a fun throwback topic related to Elimination Chamber's location, and I've got Anthony riding shotgun with me the whole way. Anthony Ricciardi, head of opinions. How are you this morning for me?
Well, it's only noon for me. It's the earliest throwback we've done, so this should be fun.
It is, and I'm stoked to be here for sure. It was an interesting Dynamite last night. We'll start with that, and then we'll get into the Montreal Screwjobs, our actually throwback topic for today, and that's always a fun and controversial one. So we'll definitely get into that. But to start, we saw the Christian Cage and Jungle Boy segment. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. You and I watched it pretty much together the whole night last night. So yeah, how did you feel about Jungle Boy, Christian, the promo, the segment as a whole?
I mean, I liked it. You knew they were building to Revolution. The one area that, and I had said this to you last night, I don't really get Jungle Boy's hesitation on doing the concerto. Like, I mean, considering how much heat that was in this feud, you kind of figure, why would he hesitate? But I get it in the same breath. You know, he's not Christian. He's not dark. He may have to go dark, and presumably that's where it's somewhat headed. I loved Christian, the way he hit Jungle Boy with the chair on the ground. It was so well done. They're building towards it. It's a good old fashioned heel getting the upper hand through the entire run, and the babyface getting their revenge. So it's a simple formula. It's worked in wrestling for many, many, many years. So it's a simple formula, and it should hopefully elevate Jungle Boy, which I would presume is what the purpose of this is, for Christian to help elevate Jungle Boy.
Definitely. And I think, yeah, that's the key. And I think going to Jack Perry is interesting because Jungle Boy is so over as a nickname. I still call him Jungle Boy myself. But that wasn't quite enough for me. At the same time, I love what you're saying about Christian elevating Jungle Boy. That's the key to this whole thing. And I think Jungle Boy showing some remorse, I guess I would say, almost even, and not going there. Yeah, hesitation. On the concerto, it made enough sense, but I still wanted to see it. And I actually think that kind of was the most brilliant part of this segment. Was, even though it was, I am totally in agreement with you on it. It was frustrating that he didn't pull the trigger.
Yeah.
But it still made me want to see him do it almost more. And so that if we're working towards that, not necessarily that he goes dark, but that he just is finally pushed to that place where we see a really vicious version of Jack Perry, right?
An edge. And
yeah,
my only issue was how long they had him hesitate. Not so much that he hesitated. I got that, but he hesitated to a point where, and you and I had said this, is Luchasaurus or somebody going to come out to stop him? Because that's what it looked like. He was waiting for somebody.
Right.
Granted, that's not what they did, but that was the big thing, where it would look like he was waiting for somebody. And it's kind of what I find funny is JR got so much crap when he referred to him as Jungle Boy Jack Perry, and that's what they're going with now. You know, Jungle Boy's a fun little nickname, but Jack Perry, the man stepping up.
Strong name.
Yeah, that's where I think they're going with it.
Definitely. And yeah, I think, overall it was a segment that did its job, I would say.
Yes,
for sure. Right. Next we had Bryan Danielson. I'm still excited for Bryan Danielson, MJF. I don't know about you, man, but I just am.
Yeah. I mean, so am I. I mean, I want to see it. Like I said, to me, the way the feud's been built, I don't necessarily know if an Iron Man fits the build for it. But I think it's going to be a really good match. I think it's one of those ones that I think it's being done. And I said this before, I think it's being done to show another side of MJF like because he's viewed as just the mic guy, and this is to showcase no, he can go bell to bell. I believe that's what the purpose of this is. Although the way it was built, you'd almost think it was an I Quit match based on the the heatness and just I'm going to take you out. Like you don't typically hear that in for Iron Man match buildups. I don't
Right.
Sean and Brett talking about it in those type of terms.
The focus hasn't necessarily been the cardio or the wrestling
Yes.
moveset. It's been the violence, which is interesting.
Yes.
I think that's a very good point. And while we're on the subject, let's cover the MJF promo too. I know that this is slightly out of order, but
Yes.
just because they're so linked.
Mhm.
I thought the MJF promo was really good. You and I talked about it last night, though. I mean, did he really just reveal his breakup? That was
That was
about a move on TV, right?
That was the first thought because the question was, okay, is that storyline MJF talking about this, or is that like real? That was the first thing. And one of the great things about MJF promos is there's an element of realism to them. Like even if it's not real, he has such a conviction that you go, wait, did that really happen?
Yeah, was that serious?
I mean, granted, the people that called 911 thinking that he framed a girl for murder or whatever that was, that I don't understand.
Outlandish.
I mean, that's outlandish. But I mean, one of the other things that we noticed, and we noticed during the broadcast, we're not sure why. We think it might have been for hearing impaired. We've never seen that before, but like during MJF's promo, you could see behind Bryan Danielson along the little ticker, the words were coming up as he was speaking them. So I don't know if that's a new thing, which I thought was nice, for anybody that's, in an arena that would be hearing impaired. I thought that was a nice little thing, but that's a side matter. But it was something I thought might as well point out that we've noticed in promo.
I think definitely worth pointing out. We saw the same thing when Max Caster
Yes.
cut his rap or his freestyle.
But yeah, MJF took a real life situation, which presumably, if he really did, him and the fiance did break up, which I know reports are saying that they did. I don't know. You never know with MJF. But if he did, he took a real life situation and, like he always does, found a way to build onto his character that he's so repulsive of a human being that even his fiance doesn't even want to be with him anymore. I mean, it's ballsy. I will say that. I mean, it's definitely a ballsy move on his part.
Yeah, I agree. To invoke that much of your personal life is always wild in wrestling, and that's so deeply personal. But does it fit the storyline? Kind of, actually, at this point. After the high school girlfriend story and all of that, it does, and I think it landed last night. It was intense, to say the very least.
And the one thing I said to you, and this is before before reports were coming out that yes, it's true that he broke up with the fiance. You and we were joking around, what if this is part of the storyline? And I was like, what if she comes in as his Francine to his Shane Douglas and cost Brian? Now granted, that's probably not happening because unless, all the reports are wrong, which I don't know if they are or they aren't. But that would be, I could see MJF with a valet like a Francine. Like I think that would fit for him. I think. I mean, he doesn't need it, but at the same point, it would fit.
Definitely, and that makes a lot of sense. And Francine's a great reference there too. And even Shane Douglas. There's slightly different types of heels, but there are some similarities. Shane Douglas and MJF, and that's a great idea, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't have any issues with that one myself. Who do you think, at the end of the day, is, presuming MJF pulls it off against Danielson and wins this Iron match, who would be next? Who do you put on the opposite side of MJF?
See, that's the thing. It's got to be somebody that can go promo to promo with him. Logically, since he's a face now, I could see Adam Cole.
Mm-hmm.
I think Adam Cole's a possibility. I loved when Ricky Starks went up against him. I would not be opposed to Adam Cole or Ricky Starks when the time comes and they decide to take the belt off of him. I'd be okay with that. Like I'd rather see people that have never won it before take it. Like I don't want to see Moxley take it off of them. Like
Same.
I think it needs to be somebody that, it's not going to be. I don't believe it's going to be Punk.
It'd be fascinating, but
I mean, there's obviously the story there to run with. But I would love to see somebody get elevated. Somebody that hasn't won one. Ricky Starks would probably make the most sense in just the simple fact that he's never held a world title. Adam has, Brian has, Hangman has, Punk has, like all these people have. So I would like to see whenever MJF gets, taken away from the title picture, make somebody else. And I think that's something that he would do anyway. But Adam Cole, I think, would be the logical choice.
Cole makes a lot of sense.
It's a great story.
I would be fascinated with Adam Cole for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also think Cole could put on a really, really, really high quality main event with MJF. I didn't even actually consider Adam Cole for that spot, but it makes a heck of a lot of sense. Moving along now, we had Sky Blue versus Saraya, aka Paige. We'll just talk quickly about it. It's just nice to see Paige Saraya back in the ring, to be honest, and working again. It is cool. Obviously, this wasn't a long match; it was a predictable match, but she looked sharp. And at the end of the day, it's still, she's got to ease her way back into full competition, and I'm sure it's there's that fear, given the length of the layoff and all of that. But overall, it was just nice to see her back. No worries at all. It's just nice to see her back in the ring, and nice to see again the submission victory, using her traditional move set, as good as she can look. I'll take it, given the time that they had. I don't know if Anthony has many more thoughts to add about this one, so I'm just gonna myself move along here until he's back.
I'm back.
Perfect.
Every time I do this show, I get a delivery.
No worries, it happens. But we did have the Acclaimed versus Big Bill and Lee Moriarty, big time tag match. I keep forgetting that the Acclaimed are not the champs. Of course, the Gun Boys, the Ass Boys, inserted themselves into this match. All around, I thought this was a fun tag match. Anthony, what were your thoughts on this one? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I thought it was a fun tag match. One of the things that you and I talk about all the time is I don't know who came up with the Big Bill name. It's a really bad name. I preferred Morrissey over that. I thought it was a fun match. Them going with Jarrett and Jay Lethal to be in the tag title match was a little surprising, to be honest. The fact that Jeff Jarrett is still being in one of these top spotlights in 2023 is still wild to me. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. It was a nice showcase for the people in it.
And I agree. And by the way, did I actually skip over the Jarrett and Lethal match? I'm sorry about that.
What am I? Am I mixing them up? I'm sorry.
No. I think they were two separate matches technically. Yeah. So were they not? Or did they add Jarrett and Lethal? How did that work? I feel like I'm missing some. No, they did the Battle Royal. Is what it was.
Oh, that's right. All right, yeah.
The Battle Royal. I didn't actually put it in our notes here, so we will I really enjoyed the Acclaim match myself. Let's move on to Battle Royal.
Sorry.
What were your thoughts on the Battle Royal?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. No, I didn't put it in the notes, so it threw me off for a second. I'm like, thankfully you brought it up.
I always like tag team battle royals personally. I always like that concept. I mean, we don't see it a lot. But I do like them, especially it's almost like a double chance that you have in a battle royal, in the sense that, in a typical battle royal, you get eliminated, you're out. But a lot of the battle royals, and I know they've done them different ways, but a lot of the battle royals, both partners have to be eliminated for the team to be eliminated. So you essentially have a second chance, which I kind of like. I mean, like I said, we don't see a lot of them. I think one of the first ones that I saw, matter of fact, it was the first one I saw, was WrestleMania 14, with when LOD came back and won that one. But I mean, I thought I liked it. I do like battle royals. So
me too. And honestly, one of my favorite parts, like you said, was the tag team aspect of you both. I love the way they use the people at ringside. the way Satnam played a role, the way that they kept guys at ringside after they would get eliminated at times. I
Mhm.
thought that was really entertaining. And like sometimes, when you try slightly different stuff, it doesn't necessarily land. I thought all of the quirkiness that they had in that battle royal, given that it was also kind of a quick one, you
Yeah.
know, I thought it all worked nicely. It was one of the tidier matches. The result, I was kind of laughing. I was like, that was the only letdown for me of the match, just because, I'm not that I'm anti Jarrett and Lethal. I've just seen them for so long, and
Yeah.
for them to get a push as kind of a non-traditional tag team in the tag division, I don't know how much sense that makes. Looking back, not too long ago, how stacked that tag team division was in AEW, and where we are now. As much as I love the Acclaimed and respect all the teams at the top, it's just kind of interesting to me.
I don't get the four-way either. Like I
Yeah,
don't to me the Acclaimed trying to get their belts back from the Guns, that's the money match.
it's the
The
story.
the money match is okay, where is Billy Gunn's loyalty truly with the Acclaimed or is it with his kids? To me, like that's the story. So muddying it with a four-way really just to get more people on the show. I don't know. One of the things I thought was kind of funny, and I think I said this to you last night when they did like the backstage promo, and Sanjay's so happy that Lethal and Jarrett, and I'm going, you do realize Lethal and Jarrett have held world titles, right? More than
Yeah,
once. Like it's they're tag titles. Like it's
yeah.
I mean, no offense to tag titles, but they're not the world title.
You'd
Like
think Lethal and Jarrett and Sanjay would act like they've been there before a little bit more than that, right?
especially Jarrett. He's
Yeah,
got decades.
right.
Decades in well, I mean, Lethal's got at least 20 years in the business too, or close to it.
At least, yes,
So, I
100%.
mean, Jarrett's got 3 to 4 decades in the business. He's like, so it was kind of ridiculous. I get Sanjay celebrating because I think he's only had the X Division title, I think,
I believe that's
during
right.
his runs. So I get the excitement for that, but it felt a little weird, especially when you know their history.
100%, 100%. Yeah, I was with you on that. And it's funny because it's a completely different match that we're going to move on to next. But
Yes.
the All Atlantic Championship match, Orange Cassidy and Wheeler Yuta. I personally found this one entertaining. I really did. I didn't expect Yuta to win the title. He did, right? Orange Cassidy is Orange Cassidy, and I really dig it. But personally, it's funny. We talked a lot about the backpack thing. I think I kind of like the backpack. I think it fits him, but I want to get your thoughts on this one, Anthony.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I don't fully get Orange Cassidy. I think he can have good matches. My only gripe with Orange, and I know it's part of the gimmick, the little shin taps, like that takes me out of whatever match he's in. Like I get it. It's scripted, it's storyline. I get all that stuff, and I love Danhausen. So it's you would think I would love Orange, but I don't hate Orange, but I just don't fully. I can't fully get into his matches, like because in a lot of ways, he's not necessarily booked as a comedy character, even though he's a comedy character. They try to make him serious. Danhausen is a comedy character. R-Truth is a comedy character. So you kind of know where you're going with that. Although R-Truth kind of has found the weird balance between comedy character and serious competitor at the same time. So I think Orange is still trying to find that sweet spot, at least for me. But I thought it was a decent match. I would like to see them do more with this Mid-Atlantic title because I kind of feel like it's one of the many forgotten titles in the company because they have so many of them, especially with the Ring of Honor titles on the show as well. Now, hopefully when they branch off and do the Ring of Honor show, presumably you're going to see less Ring of Honor titles on AEW TV. I still think AEW has too many titles to begin with. With a very limited amount of airtime because nobody's watching Dark, nobody's watching Elevation. Rampage is struggling, as you guys covered yesterday. So, like realistically, you have an hour and a half when you take out commercials on Wednesday night that the core of your audience is watching. And you have a huge roster. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like you got to be careful on how many people you feature and how many titles, because it can become a problem.
No doubt, no doubt. I agree with you on that, and I think it's interesting too because I actually liked the All Atlantic title when they first released it. I think it's a cool
I love the
title.
design. The design's awesome.
Absolutely. I'll say this though. Shouldn't the TNT and TBS titles be treated almost like the television titles? And I feel like we don't see them often enough on television. That would be my complaint when
Yeah.
it comes to the title scene in AEW. As much as I do agree with you on too many belts, I don't mind them. I really like the trios belts. I think it's unique. I think the TBS belt for the way Jade Cargill's carried it, to me, it's as big of a deal as the world title.
No,
it's very cool.
You need a mid-card women's title, and you don't see that. So I really think they're doing a phenomenal job with that TBS title.
Yeah.
I almost think, and you tell me if you agree, the TNT and TBS titles, I think they should be featured every week, whether it's a title match or whatever, on those networks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I feel. Like I feel like
it makes sense.
Yes.
You would hope. And I've been saying that for a while. I mean, Rampage is the last show on TNT for them. You want an easy way to elevate Rampage? Put the TNT title on Rampage every week.
Yeah.
It's, that's
and if it's not featured, do a number one contender match for the following week's
show
or a pay-per-view or whatever you want to do. I mean, that's the problem with Rampage, and I know I wasn't on yesterday's show, is it doesn't feel like it matters.
Yeah.
It feels like, the old WWF, whether it was Velocity or Sunday Night Heat, you didn't really need to see it. It was there. You could watch it. Maybe something would happen, but 9 times out of 10, it just existed. And that's kind of what I think the problem is with Rampage, is that it doesn't feel like the big show. It felt like the big show when Punk came back. But other than that, that's where I think they struggle, because it's just kind of a show. And there's really no difference between that and like a Dark or an Elevation, where the majority of the fans that are watching go, I just watched 2 hours of SmackDown. I don't need to watch another hour of Rampage. You know what I mean? That's what I think the problem is. I mean, you and I watch that stuff.
Right. But, even if they could somehow make it feel like the third hour of Dynamite, that might be better, but they don't. I would say too, right? Like you got to wait till Friday for the third hour. If you did it that way, maybe marketing wise, that reaches more people. I'm not sure. To your point though, immediately following SmackDown, if you're going to watch both, it's real easy to leave Rampage till Saturday morning, even if you are intending to watch it.
Yeah.
Especially on the West Coast, 10 to 11 at night. It's tough. Yeah. On a Friday night, it's just, a lot of people are out at that time.
I mean, that's the thing. Like at that point, you're like, and again, it's a Friday. People have been working all week. They're exhausted. I mean, we've watched SmackDowns, and I'm like, dude, I'm beat. Like I can't watch anymore. But it happens, and it's a horrible time slot for them. It really is.
Brutal.
And the fact that they move it repeatedly, it probably does them more harm than good. Just because it hurts the brand because of the bad ratings, and it's a product that there's if Dynamite is getting, let's say, 900,000 viewers, I'm just spitballing here, and Rampage only gets a third of that, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just whether you keep the Rampage name or you change, if you just change the name and don't change the product, it's not going to matter.
No question. That's a really, really good point. You gotta tweak the product itself as well as the rebrand.
It has to feel different.
I agree. 100%. Let's move on to the main event. Last night we got Jon Moxley versus Evil Uno. And I think we were all impressed with Evil Uno the week before. To set it up, I was impressed with him in this match. I thought he looked good. I really did. Would you have thoughts on his performance before we get into like the match as a whole?
I like Evil Uno. I really wasn't very familiar with him from the indie scene. But I've actually seen him multiple times. I see him more on Ethan Page's vlogs, toy hunting, than I do on AEW TV. So I've kind of gotten to, I'm like, oh, he does he seems like somebody that you and I could have a conversation with about whatever, whether it's
Oh,
wrestling or pop
absolutely.
culture, whatever. Like he
Yeah.
seems like that type, and he's in our age bracket, so it
Mhm.
makes it even funnier when he's talking about stuff that we grew up with. So, but like I like that they have him stepping up because, and I've said this before, the Dark Order kind of disintegrated a lot from its original beginnings with Brody. Not only members have dropped off, but the group itself is kind of a joke. Like it's reminiscent of the oddities in WWF in the late '90s, where it was like it's the comedy group. It's not it's the goofs. Nobody pays attention to them. So like Uno stepping up, I thought was great. Now, granted, it is predictable that obviously he's going to get destroyed by Moxley because Moxley's in a feud with Hangman. We kind of knew that beforehand, but I thought it was a good showing. One of the rare Moxley's opponent bleeds, but Moxley doesn't bleed, which is one of the things we talked about last week. I thought it was a good showing. You kind of knew it was going to get vicious beforehand, but especially when Uno's like, "Don't come out. I don't want you to come out until the bell rings." So you knew it was going there. So I thought it was a nice showing. I'm hoping this isn't the end of seeing Uno. One of the things during the live stream when we were watching it, I said to Kobe, I'm like, it's been years since Uno's been on like one-on-one match, and it really has. I think it was like 16 months or something like that since the last time he's had a one-on-one match on Dynamite, and it was against Danielson.
Mhm.
So which I guess that was probably around the same time as his Hangman feud, him going through the members of the Dark Order to get the Hangman or whatever,
Right.
which is the recurring theme with AEW. You got to go through people to get the people.
Yeah.
But I would hope we would see more of him. And I'm hoping this isn't just okay, we're just putting him in here for the Hangman purposes, and then he disappears again for another 6 to 8 months before he shows up on actual TV and not the YouTube shows.
100%, 100%. And last but not least about this match, what was up with Hangman's music?
I mean, that was the question that we had, because I'm like, please
Totally
tell me they didn't change his music, because he's one of the few that like it's really good music. Because I mean, some of them are like, okay, it's generic, whatever, but like Hangman's, especially the opening,
it's great.
I mean, I think they said people were saying it was the Dark Order's theme, which according to Kobe, I believe said that they changed the Dark Order's music or something. Like the people in the arena heard it, but like we didn't.
Yeah.
So because when we first heard it, we're like, that doesn't sound like the Dark Order's theme. Now, granted, you don't hear it much because they're rarely on. And I've been perfectly clear with this. I don't watch Dark or Elevation, and I watch Rampage when I see a card that's interesting to me or I hear something. I do DVR it every week in case I do want to watch it, but I wasn't familiar with the theme. I was like, please tell me they didn't change it. I think I even joked with you. I'm like, please tell me they didn't go generic music to match like the video game, because there's talk that the AEW video game is not going to have all the entrance themes, for a cost-cutting measure is what the rumor is, which we're looking forward to that game, and I'm sure we'll be discussing that at some point.
Okay, can't wait. It's gonna be fun.
But yeah, I thought it was a good match. It did what it needed to do.
I did too, and definitely, and overall, actually, I thought a very entertaining Dynamite start to finish, and one that on paper going in, it's funny because a few weeks we've had high expectations and they've underdelivered. I think this one we had more medium expectations, and I'd say they slightly over-delivered most of the card. Right? I was into it throughout the whole show, and overall it was fun, but at the end of the day, we call Thursday Throwback Thursday for a reason. So Dynamite was yesterday, and this was a lot of yesterdays ago. 1997, I believe.
Yes.
But after the stop in Montreal for Elimination Chamber this year, we felt timely we'd bring up the world famous Montreal Screwjob, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels. If you don't know the story, pretty much made Vince McMahon. Bret Hart was leaving the company, didn't want to drop the belt to Shawn. They had the match at Survivor Series in Montreal. Bret Hart, being Canadian, didn't want to drop the belt in Canada with his contract expiring. Vince wasn't sure he was trustworthy enough to not take the belt over to WCW. And so Shawn Michaels put Bret Hart in Bret's own move, the sharpshooter, and
Mhm.
Vince iconically told Earl Hebner to ring the bell, and Bret Hart tore up ringside, spit in Vince's face, and Air wrote WCW backwards, and
Uh-huh.
the rest is history.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the most iconic moments in WWE, in Montreal, and unbelievable. What are your thoughts, your memories,
Yeah.
how do you feel about it?
It's funny. I started watching wrestling a few months after that, in about April of '98. But I remember hearing even back then, oh, the Montreal Screwjob. Now, over the years, I've seen a number of documentaries WWE produced, Dark Side of the Ring, Wrestling with Shadows, and have read multiple books on it, both Bret's biography, Sean's biography, and other books about the history of the business. That may be the single event that changed the wrestling industry forever. And it's the event that I think ultimately, if you're looking back, that's the event that helped WWF overtake WCW. Leading back to it, like what you said, Clark, there have been two different narratives. The one narrative is Bret didn't want to lose in Canada. The other one, which has come out over the years, is no, Bret didn't want to lose to Shawn. I wrote about this maybe about a year ago. It's somewhere on Wrestling Republic. If anybody wants to go see it. There were alternatives that they could have done with this, which is why I kind of find it a little bit hard to believe that it wasn't Bret didn't want to lose in Canada, because, okay, you're seriously telling me nobody considered making this a triple threat because there was a story already built in with Bret, Shawn, and Taker. Like, in theory, Shawn could have beat Taker for the belt, and Bret wouldn't have had to been beaten, and Shawn would have gotten the title. So it could have been a Shawn thing, but at the same point, you could have put Taker in there, have Taker be a transitional champion because Taker would always do what's right for the company. One of the things to consider is there was a 20-year contract, which was the thing. Vince signed Bret to a 20-year contract. Vince could not honor the contract or wanted out of the contract, one or the other. So they let him talk to WCW. One of the things that have come out over the years is Vince purposely let Bret trick Bischoff to think that Bischoff was in a bidding war, and ended up paying Bret more than what he probably would have paid him at that point. Because there's, almost like the MJF situation where we got now. But that's the thing. Bret ended up getting more money. My feeling has always been with this, I think you do tradition-wise, whether you like Shawn or not, Vince did a lot for WWF did a lot for you. You're on your way out the door. Technically, anybody in wrestling, they never really won the title. It's somebody doing them the favor.
Right.
It's not boxing. It's professional wrestling. There's a story. To me, tradition is you lose on the way out. And if you're a champion, you drop the title to whoever the company wants you to drop the title to. That's always been my feeling. Should it have played out the way it was supposed it did? Probably not. But the thing that people seem to forget is Alundra Blaze left WWF as the women's champion and showed up on Nitro and dropped the women's title in the trash can. Vince wasn't going to take that chance. And it's not like Vince didn't do that himself. When Ric Flair jumped, he was the world champion of WCW, and he showed up on air with the title. So both companies did it. So I understand the hesitation with that. But, I think Bret should have dropped it. But if that didn't happen, the Mr. McMahon wouldn't have happened. If Mr. McMahon didn't happen, the Austin McMahon thing wouldn't have happened. And there's so many things that happened out of that. It is tragic what happened with Bret's career, the injury, in WCW, with Owen. There are a number of things that was a domino effect. And if Bret would have stayed, we might not have gotten Austin versus McMahon. We might not have gotten certain things. I mean, it's sad to say, but things needed to happen that way. We don't know what would have happened if it would have went the other way.
Definitely. And it's funny. I have a funny tidbit because I was, 6 when it happened, watched it live. And it was almost, in hindsight, foreshadowing, because when he did the WCW thing, I thought it meant he was going to bring over like NW. He was so mad about Vince
The
screwing him.
reverse invasion.
He was going to bring over WCW guys to back him up against Sean and whoever else, DX and everybody. That was what I thought. And then when he showed up on Nitro, it was like, oh, and the Bret screwed Bret. It was like, oh, even at that age, I knew, I'm like, something is up here. This is different. And obviously in hindsight, it's even easier to understand what happened. And yes, to your point, it's a total shame what happened with Bret's career, although the plate under the hockey jersey spot on the spear is still one of my favorite Bret Hart segments ever.
That's probably, if you ask Bret, that's probably his favorite highlight from his WCW.
It's like the only good one.
Yeah.
That was the other one is, what are you doing bringing him in as a special guest referee? What was that?
I mean, the thing that I didn't understand with that is, and again, there have been stories, Bret has said this multiple times, that Hogan didn't want to face him. Like he was supposed to face Hogan for the title in WWF. There were posters apparently that were, mocked up for it. And Hogan was like, no, I don't want to wrestle Bret. According to Bret, I believe Bret has said that before. Yeah. So, it's a shame because you look at that Starrcade main event. It was built up for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Sting was not in the best shape, as they've said. The match under-delivered for a year build up, it's very difficult to do a year build up and to live up to that height.
In anything, yeah.
But, to me, Bret coming in, Bret should have confronted whoever won that match.
Yeah.
And especially if it was Hogan. Let's say if they would have won Hogan, which ultimately I think the belt ended up back with Hogan anyway at some point, didn't it?
I believe so,
yeah. Like
there was a lot of hot potato that time with the WCW
he
belt.
could have easily came in and went, I am the real champion. I was never beaten for my title. You've been ducking me for years, Hogan, or whoever. That's what you do. You bring him in and go, and I'm the real champion. And there's a portion of the audience that knows that. You don't come in and bring him in and go, I'm preventing a screw job, which obviously was a disaster anyway, as we just saw in the A&E documentary, as they relived the NWO thing. The referee did not fast count it like he was supposed to.
Yep.
So it really made it look extra botch for that. But, I mean, that made no sense. Like, you bring him in, he could have literally cut a promo burying Vince on air, burying WWF on air, saying, I'm the real champion, Shawn Michaels is a piece of shit. Like, I mean, there's a number of things that they could have done that would have all been better. Now, whether or not they were afraid of being sued by WWF because they already sued them over the Razor Diesel thing, that's a possibility. I mean, I don't know what was going through their head at that time, but almost anything would have been better. I mean, if Bret didn't want to do it, it's a different story. But if it was presented to Bret and he went, no, I'm out of there. I don't want to mention them. I'm done. I still think you bring him in and going, I'm the real champion. Like, why would he be opposed to that? Like, it just realistically, like, why would you be opposed to that from that angle? If you don't want to mention them, that's fine. I get it. You're pissed. You don't want to do it because you're afraid you're going to say something that may end up in a lawsuit. I get 100%. It. But at the same point, bringing him in the way they brought him in and the way they used him may be one of the biggest tragedies of anybody being brought in and being underutilized in the history of the business.
I could not agree with you more. And it would have changed the course of history if they go about that a little bit differently. But before we're done with the Montreal Screwjob, here's the most important question that we'll end the show with. Did Sean know?
He had to.
Yeah.
I mean, I briefly thought about, like, you think about a possibility because there are people, and this is something that we'll wrap it up with. There are people that are still convinced to this day that the whole thing was a work.
Yeah.
Which honestly, you look at it, the Wrestling with Shadows people were there. They're filming it. Although Vince tried to stop that from airing, I believe. He tried to buy the film and they wouldn't sell it. But, as I've said to people before, I think the way it played out, Sean, Hunter, they knew. Obviously, Earl knew at the last minute. But, the only way it's a work, and I sincerely mean this, Bret and Vince would have to be the only two people that know that it was part of an angle. Like, you almost think it could have been a work in the sense of going, okay, this gives our company a jump start, and this gives you an extra padding besides the money you're getting from WCW that you got extra because they think you were in a bidding war. But it gives you a jump start in WCW.
Yep.
Like, they can't possibly screw this up. Like, almost like both companies would benefit out of it. And with the thought being Brett would eventually come back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd be surprised if that wasn't in their minds at some point. Because I think Brett even said it in a thing. He's like, even after the screw job, I was willing to go back for the Hall of Fame, which seems kind of odd to me because they weren't doing it. Like, they only did like with them, and it was years. Like,
with the Owen stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. That threw me for a loop. The other thing I think about it being a work, I just don't see Brett as the guy who would be willing to expose the business the way it was for that.
No,
and that's why I just don't see that as a true possibility.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, everything gets leaked in wrestling.
Yeah, 100%.
After all this time, and especially after the Owen thing, there's no way that. I mean, if there are any two people that would take it to their grave, it probably would be Brett and Vince. In all honesty,
arguably almost even Sean.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing. But it's Sean took the heat, and one of the famous things that Sean talked about was he went to Taker. Mm-hmm. That's who he went to because he knew if Taker forgave him for what happened, there's nobody in the rest of the locker room that would step up to Sean because Taker's got his back. And
then he's fine.
I mean, Sean was in an unenviable position. The company wants to put the strap on you. They want you as the face of the company. Yeah. And the guy who's holding it won't do business. Now, granted, Sean was a prick.
He was.
He said that. He openly says that. He was an absolute prick back then.
Yeah.
One of the best things is the fact that Brett and Sean are on good graces now with each other. And that hug, when they for the first time on air, that killed. If you remember, that was the first night where TNA was trying to redo the Monday Night Wars. Mm-hmm. That was their first show, and they were going against Bret Hart's return to the company after his long years. And literally, Bret comes out and calls Sean out.
Mm-hmm. 1,000%. I think that moment is underrated and iconic. It's one of my favorites, and I think it was necessary too. It's very cool that happened, and I wish it could have happened earlier, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. It was great when they did it, and better late than never, as they say, and I enjoy. I think that's a great point. The full circle moment, and to go against TNA, that's an even better tidbit. That's classic.
Yeah, and the one last thing is the screw job kind of gets overshadows the match itself.
Oh yeah,
up to the screw job part, it's a phenomenal match,
outstanding match.
But nobody pays attention to it because all they look at is that final
the finish,
ring the bell. That's all they see. But if you go back and really look at the match, they've always had great matches together. And one of the biggest tragedies is we didn't get that other match,
right? Because
of Brett's, health issue, but that would have been talk about a WrestleMania match, Sean and Brett one final time.
It would be unbelievable. It almost should have been the way that they both went out if it was possible. But I mean, the way Sean went out was as great as it gets. So there's no changing that, I guess. At the end of the day, though, it's such an iconic moment. And then the rivalry as a whole, too. Those two names are linked, I think, in wrestling history forever. Yeah. But yeah, it's been a fun Throwback Thursday as usual. Yep. I got to head out to Vegas, my friends.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good one. Anthony, thank you so much as usual. And that's it for today. Throw us that like and subscribe, and I will be gone for this weekend, but Anthony and the boys will be holding it down until I'm back. Thank you guys for having me. I'll talk to everyone soon.
Yeah.